Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and I'm finally ready to bring you my Goosebumps Most Wanted book ranking video. So, this has been a long time coming. Ever since the very first video on my channel, I started with Zombie Halloween, and it's taken a long time to read 15 books. But, I like to jump around series, and we're finally at this point where I can finally rank the books, and I'll give you some brief thoughts on them as I go over them, ranking them from the worst one in my opinion to the best, and let you know how I think about them. So I want to save what I want to say in the bulk for the end of the video and kind of just go ahead and jump into the ranking. But beforehand, what do I have to say about Most Wanted off cuff? It's probably my least favorite Goosebumps series, just so y'all know. And a lot of you are going to definitely see some books in some peculiar spots. I know some people are very opinionated about certain books out there. And I encourage all of you, if you disagree with something, you can point it out. Or if you want to list your ranking of the Most Wanted series down in the comment section, that'll be great too. I want to know. I want to know everybody's thoughts on this series. Overall, if you liked it or not, But without further ado, we're going to talk about 15 books. 15 books include books Wanted the Haunted Mask all the way through the final Most Wanted book, and that counts 15 in total, 14 if you have the 10 normal books, and then the 4 special editions, and then with, like I said, Wanted the Haunted Mask, that makes 15. So we're going to go from worst to best. So the only F tier book I have in this ranking goes to my bottom, my number 15. And that is book number 5, Dr. Maniac Will See You Now. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this book. This is probably one of the worst Goosebumps books I've ever read, personally. I really don't like anything about this book, hardly. There are some things I kind of enjoy, like the nods to comic creators and actors. I like the leg scene. If you read that, you know what I'm talking about. That was pretty good. And some of the jokes Purple Rage made were good, but for the most part, this book had a lot of the sins that the book before it in this franchise, Dr. Maniac versus Robbie Schwartz, had. It cranked it up to 11. This book felt a little too long in areas. It felt very parodic. It felt like it was mocking comic fans. I don't know what Stein was smoking when he was writing this franchise or came up with this character, but man, that's a doozy. And honestly, what makes this book more intolerable is the fact that all the characters are terrible. And the concept is very loose, misusing, tropes about dreams in the terms of comic reality. It's just kind of stupid. So, yeah, this is the only F tier book for me. But, there could be worse. Definitely one of the worst in the entirety of Goosebumps, though, in my opinion. So that's number 15. Now, number 14. Now, depending on how far along you've read Goosebumps, you actually might get a good enjoyment out of this book, and I can totally see if you do. But as a seasoned reader, I'm not a fan of this. This one is a D- tier, and we have number 14. It's book number 8, Night of the Puppet People. I mean, there's some things to like about this book. I think the body horror is good. I was really attached to the two main characters having this repressed memory thing that ended up getting dropped near the end of the book. That kind of upset me. But the body horror was good. Even though this book kind of feels like Son of Slappy in a lot of ways, and Son of Slappy came out just not relatively too far before this one. I mean, it was like pretty close when they released these. So it has a lot of Son of Slappy, and it kind of comes off like a rehash of former Night of the Living Dummy books. Like I said, the dropped concept with the repressed memory really hurts it. And then the final act, right? This book, its climax is textbook Most Wanted. Most Wanted, I'll get into this near the end of the video in more detail, but it's mainly just you have these, kind of rehashy ideas, not really original, but all the book is trying to be hinging on the climax and the ending. And for some books, they work. In this book, all I have to say is the villain, he was kind of cool, but the whole puppet cells angle really loses me. And then the ending just makes me realize how sucky these main characters were, how sucky the bullies were, and yeah, not a fan of this one. That's why it's as low as it is. But if you're a new reader, you might like this more. At number 13, now I was not expecting to like this book as much as I did, but I actually prefer this over the book that came before it, and that is Planet of the Law Gnomes. And I'm talking about Revenge of the Law Gnomes. When I say I prefer this over that, I do prefer this over Revenge of the Law Gnomes. This book actually had some surprising things I liked. The main character, he was kind of annoying at first, but then he became like this anti-hero with some good sympathy and a really deep backstory. That kind of became all for nothing at the end, but I was hooked on that. Some scenes are really dark. This book is very reminiscent to Series 2000. It kind of feels more experimental. And this is definitely the book that starts the trend of the most wanted books where you go into rehashing and then you go into a weird final act. That's essentially all this book is. Really no plot to it. A really dumb, predictable twist at the end. You know, not too terrible, but the second reveal on that triple-decker twist, which I can appreciate, is really dumb. And then the ending's a wet fart. But this one's a little harder to rate. I think this one's like, I'm pretty confident this is supposed to be bad on purpose. But yeah, a 2.8 out of 5. I don't know if I said the ratings for these, in case I got sidetracked, but this is a D- tier. I think Dr. Maniac will see now I gave a 1.5 out of 5, which is an F. And then I gave Night of the Puppet People 2.7 out of 5. So this one's a 2.8, just a little bit above Night of the Puppet People. Okay, let's make sure I include the points as I go along, continuing on. Okay, so now we're getting into, we're getting out of the bad territory. Like D- is bad, like Planet of the Law Gnomes is bad, Night of the Puppet People is bad, and then Dr. Maniac we'll see now is just terrible in the F tier. But now we're just in the plain old D, which is like kind of a blend of okay, not good, not bad, meh, decent. It depends on how high they fluctuate. There's a bunch of adjectives I use from a 3 to a 3.4. This is a 3.3, and I think this one is just okay. Nothing too special about it. I wasn't really impressed with it. Could have been worse. And that is book number 3, How I Met My Monster. I like Beans, the main character. I like how his anxiety is portrayed in the story. That was really relatable, and I really commend Stein for writing that. Some aspects were cool that you don't really see in Goosebumps, like living in an apartment complex. You don't really see that. Cool little setting pieces here and there, but this book is what really holds it back is just it's kind of mediocre. It borrows too much from The Girl Who Cried Monster and My Harry's Adventure, creating this puberty, coming of age type of story, which is good-hearted, but you've seen it all before. And then it goes into the You Gotta Believe Me, which really takes me out of it. This is definitely one of the most You Gotta Believe Me books of all time, and I can't stand it. I mean, it feels like Bean at some points of the story gets caught in his paranoia, and it just comes repetitive, and it just doesn't really move along the plot. It just kind of stagnates. So that's why I have it here at number 12. Number 11. Now, some of you might have this book lower, and I'll be honest. I totally understand. But honestly, I really didn't mind this book as much. Maybe I might not like it the second go around, but yeah, it's kind of the same issue as How I Met My Monster for me. And it's book number 10, The Lizard of Oz. Yeah, The Lizard of Oz. Kind of a doozy of a book. It has, a fine idea behind it. The lizard concept was cool. I like some of the body horror with the main character. But it gets kind of into the bland of the retreading idea of Stay Out of the Basement. It's probably the weakest of the basement formula books. The dad character kind of sucks. The final act is kind of a wet fart. But everything else is fine. It's just fine. I mean, doesn't get too much wrong. It's just the ending is kind of out there. Not as bad as some of the other endings, in my opinion. Um, and that's probably why I put it so high. Maybe if I reread it, I might hate the ending a little more. I'm not sure. But yeah, for now, I gave this one about a 3.4 out of 5. This one's okay. It's an okay one, in my opinion. It's not really bad. Some people, like I said, I could see why you think this is bad, but I didn't think it was all that bad. Now, here's the first book. Now, I guess I'll preface this with this. I did lower the points on 3 of the books, and I'll go on those as I go along. But this one I originally gave a 3.6 out of 5, which is a C minus. And that was with bonus points for the final act, and I decided to trim down the bonus points to give this book a 3.4, only because the more I think about this book, the more I really dislike it. And I probably will never reread this book again anyway, so we have, what are we at? The number 10 spot, we have special edition number 3, Trick or Trap. Trick or Trap. One of the most frustrating books, I think, of all time. I have never been so mad reading a Goosebumps book. This is probably the one book that's taken me the longest to finish. It took me about a week to finish this thing. I was just so uninterested. I had to take breaks. I took a couple day breaks in between sometimes. I just hate this main character, Scott Harmon. He's probably one of my all-time least favorite characters. Everything he does is uninspired. He's kind of a dunce, kind of a moron. Him and his friend Amanda, I mean, they're kind of sympathetic because they get bullied, but even then, I think they kind of deserve it by the way they just carry themselves. They're just really dumb kids. And the whole story kind of gets interesting when they find this mask in this haunted house around Halloween. It gets really cool. And, it takes a while to get there. The final act of the book is really what makes this book shine, because the first 2 or 3 acts is a snooze fest, and it's Scott. There's a scene I'll never forget from this book. He's literally in the forest, meandering for 4 chapters, just laying around in leaves, doing mud angels, whatever he's doing. It is the most boring thing and dumb thing I've ever read in Goosebumps. Yeah. But the ending kind of saves it. Gets kind of good. The villain's not all that fleshed out, but the ending's kind of dark, and Scott gets a bad ending like he deserves, because I really don't like his character. So yeah. That's why I put this book as low as I did. Yeah. D+. All right, now we're getting into the C tier. Now these are books I'd probably recommend. This little stack of books here, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. The first, spot 15 to spot 10, I probably would never reread these again. I probably would never recommend you read them. But this one moving forward, I probably would. I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5, which is a C minus. It's typical of the Most Wanted formula. It's very flawed. I know some people really love this book. This is a fan favorite out there. It just didn't do it for me. I know some people actually flat out hate this book. I don't see the hate, but I could definitely see you thinking that it's a little bit overrated. And that is Nightmare on Clown Street. The clown concept is different for Goosebumps. I like some of the things with the knives being thrown at the main character. I like the setting. The carnival setting really hooked me. Some of the ideas worked. Some of the suspense worked. Then it just got really weird. And, sometimes weird could be good, but the way the climax handles this book, the climax is terrible to me. It's just really out there and bad. And the ending is also equally bad and baffling at the same time, because it spoils itself, the twist. So yeah, could have been better. But, Murder the Clown, I don't see how he's a villain. I don't see how he's an iconic villain, or villain in general, but, okay book. I mean, it's good. Lower end of good, I'd say. Alright, this next one. Now, this one is another book that I lowered points on. Originally, I gave this book a 4.1 out of 5, and I gave a generous amount of bonus points because I wanted to give it a 3.5 out of 5, right where I gave A Nightmare on Clown Street. But I decided to go back and deduct half the bonus points I gave it and give this a 3.8 out of 5, only because I think a part of the book is just really devastating to my opinion of this book. And I like a certain aspect of it, but it just doesn't carry it as much as I thought it did in my initial review. And that is Goosebumps Wanted the Haunted Mask. Now, the prologue to this book is excellent. Probably the best thing ever written in Goosebumps, hands down. The Luann arc was pretty fine. I honestly loved coming back to the Haunted Mask formula. Some of my favorite formula, a lot of people like the humanoid creatures coming to life, like the dummy books or Nalondos. My favorite thing is people wearing something, like werewolf skin or Haunted Mask. That's my favorite, I guess, tropey book. But Luann was fine. I mean, I wanted to see where the story was going. Then we get to the Devon arc, and the Devon arc is just, you gotta believe me, feels like fifth grade zombies in a lot of the wrong ways. Feels like it's taken too much from Scarecrow Walks at Midnight and the You Gotta Believe Me formula, and it's really kind of bland and out of place in the book. Really ruins the steam. It's a Haunted Mask book, and you read about a pumpkin patch. What? Now the ending to it was okay. I kind of wish that you can just trim this down. It doesn't need to be this big. Just make the Luann story in the prologue, and then I don't know, fit the Devon part in near the end, and make a better climax with Luann, and then I guess have the same epilogue, and you'll be okay. But this is fine. The prologue definitely makes this book what it is for a lot of folks. Some people have said this is the best Most Wanted book. Some people have said this is their favorite Goosebumps book of all time. I can understand for the prologue, but everything else, no. So, yeah, one of the Haunted Mask. And then, like I said, this is a 3.8 out of 5. And where are we at? We're at number 8. Now we're in the top 7, which are B's or higher, okay? I'm going to move these all here. So, at number 7, I was pleasantly surprised with this book. I know a lot of people... This book seems to be kind of divisive, but I think this one was pretty well done. And that is Special Edition number 4, The Haunter. The Haunter here. I was surprised. I really liked the main character's monologue. It was very rich. It had the coming-of-age feel. Kind of was taking elements from Son of Slappy and Night of the Puppet People. But I like the vibe of the Ghost Hunters aspect, the Halloween atmosphere. There was 3 Halloween Special Edition books, which were great. The Halloween atmosphere was kind of fun. The first 2 acts were building up, I felt, to something grander, something more dark. There's going to go this whole ghostly possession route, and then we get to part 3. And that's where the silliness comes in the book and just really ruins the mood and the tone, and it clashes really bad. And it kind of bleeds into the final act of the book, where the ending is not the greatest thing ever, but it has like a coming-of-age ending, but it sends a horrible message involving that whatever it's trying to send. But yeah, nonetheless, The Haunter, I gave it about a 4 out of 5 flat. So yeah, low B. And number 6, another 4 out of 5 flat, is a book that I know a lot of people kind of like, or even love in some ways. Seems to be a fan favorite from this series. I think another book later on did this exact formula better, but this was alright. Pretty good, very good. Frankenstein's Dog. Now, Frankenstein's Dog, character was kind of like a reluctant protagonist, but one thing I can really applaud about this book is the writing. The writing is probably the best in the whole series. It's very linear, it's very to the point. It's not really boring, it's engaging, but the problem is, you go in the whole Jekyll and Hyde, Beware the Snowman, Judy and the Beast, Stay Out of the Basement, I'm Your Evil Twin route, and you get this. You've seen a couple of these twists before, but the atmosphere really sells this book. The atmosphere's great, the writing's great, the characters are actually pretty good. The only things that really don't add up are some story elements, especially by the end. It feels too much like Stay Out of the Basement in some areas, kind of lacks in some originality. Not as badly as others, but still a fun one. Definitely would recommend this one. Alright. Now, the top 5. These are the ones that I probably would go out of my way to recommend to you all. Okay? Now this one seems to be another fan favorite one. Some people probably would have this as their number one, or maybe even higher than me, but respectively so. I still think this is a great book. So we have special edition number 2, The 12 Screams of Christmas. I gave this book a 4.3 out of 5, which is a high B. I really like this book. The prologue was dark, it was atmospheric, got you in the mood, and then the part when you cut to present day, the whole cattiness with the main character and her rival, it just dragged on. For that part was probably the weakest part of the whole book. It was really boring, kind of a snooze fest, and just mean-spirited. But once you got past that part and you got to the house from the prologue, it got good. Like the Father Christmas stuff, the climax of the story, great stuff. The ending, it's a give or take for me, but overall, really solid one. Definitely the most unique idea from the whole Most Wanted series. Not the best written. Like I said, I think Frankenstein's Dog is probably the best written one, and this one has the most original idea. But yeah, still a good one. Great one. Definitely would revisit this one. Now, my number 4. This probably is the most wanted book out of all of them. This is the most random, wild book ever. But it's one of those, I guess, accidental perfect storms to me. It has its flaws, but this one's a bona fide classic. This reminds me of the original 62 so much, and I just have a fondness for this. Here Comes the Shaggy. I gave this book a 4.4 out of 5. I really want to give this book an A, but there's just some really glaring issues dealing with, like, some of the characters in the story, dealing with motives, how some things operate. Some people feel really divided by the main character. There's this reveal in the middle of the book with the main character. I actually like that reveal. I think it offers a different feeling middle act of a story. The Shaggy's a great monster. The kaiju bit at the end was great. And this makes me want to see a sequel of it so bad. The concept of this on paper should not work. It sounds too random. It sounds too out there. But it's fun. It just screams fun. It screams that classic creative R.L. Stine. And this is probably, like I said, if 12 Screams of Christmas is the most original, and Frankenstein's Dog is the best written, this one's definitely the most creative. Now, it does borrow some other elements from other Goosebumps books that you've seen before, which kind of, sets it back a little, but it's a fun idea. So, yeah, that's why I have it so high. Now, my top 3. My number 3 might piss a lot of you off, because I know a lot of you hate this book. I know a lot of you Slappy fans out there, specifically, think that this is the worst Slappy book. And I'm not here to, judge opinions. I'm not the biggest Slappy fan ever, and I really like the way they handled Slappy in this book. That might be kind of a controversial opinion, but, it's mine. So, we have book number 2, Son of Slappy. I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5. I gave this book an A. I truly think this deserves an A. This is probably one of my favorite Slappy books of all time. Only because, majority of the time you get this formulaic Night of the Living Dummy clone type of story going on. And when they actually do something different with them and make them more sinister, make them more mind-gamey, I like that version of Slappy. And you get that here. You get a falling from grace protagonist, which is really messed up to see what happens to them. Normally I'd be against it, but the book does this so well. Now, it does have its silly moments. It has its silly moments. Has its kind of wonky moments. The whole chirp thing, you know what I'm talking about if you've read it. Really is kind of dumb. But this book, it's dark. And that's why I praise it so highly. I just love where it goes, and I love where it ends. This is a downright dark one. I think most people's vitriol with the book comes from the cover, and we'll get into that near the end of the video about some of these covers here. But I don't blame you if you paid money thinking you're getting one thing and don't get what you were expecting. Spoiler alert, if you look at this cover, you're not getting this. Trust me, I'll leave it at that. You're not getting this. But, hey, it's still great for what it is. So, yeah, my third favorite. Now, top 2. This was hard. But this one I feel like is my number 2. I was not expecting to like this one as much as I did, but I really did enjoy this. So at number 2, we have book number 6, Creature Teacher, The Final Exam. Now, as a Creature Teacher sequel or prequel, this makes no sense. But as its own standalone story or an alternate universe story, this is a blast. Miss Marg is definitely, probably next to Slappy, the most reasonable, most wanted villain to have. People actually want to see this villain. This is like if you took Welcome to Camp Nightmare and blended it with the original Creature Teacher. Yeah, there's some familiar plot beats, but it does its own fun things with it and does its own change-ups to where it's fun. It makes it stand out a little bit. There are some things dealing with like the motives behind some camp counselors and some wonky things here and there. But other than that, this book is just a pure fun book from start to finish. It gets dark. It has a lot of Series 2000 in its veins. You can kind of see that. Yeah, it's a lot of dark scenes, like the stuff with the bats. That was creepy. The stuff with the swim tunnels. That was creepy too. But yeah, really fun one. Super fun one. Yeah, could not recommend this one high. This is, I gave this one, I think, a 4.6 out of 5, which is relatively near a middle to low A. So yeah. And then the final book, my favorite book, I'm actually deducting points on. The original, the original review I gave for this, I gave a 4.9 out of 5, but thinking back on it, since it was so long ago, this was the very first book review I ever did on the channel. There are some issues I have with it that on my current metric of rating stuff, it's not the same as I used to do it. I had to adjust this. Now, I think the prologue is great. I still think this book is an A. I think with the change in points, I'll probably drop it down to a 4.7 out of 5. And my number 1 favorite most wanted book is Zombie Halloween, Special Edition number 1. Yes, this is my favorite one. The prologue in this is super sad, dark, and kind of gory, all in one. Probably next to one of the Haunted Mask prologue, this is probably the best prologue in the history of Goosebumps. I mean, it hits you in all the right places. Now, when you get caught up to the modern day, there is a fun twist dealing with the character you saw in the prologue, maybe being a grandparent of the kid. Now, the kids in the story do have this, like, zombie obsession. They do kind of get one-dimensional at times, but they are kind of like a Scooby-Doo gang trying to investigate the legend behind these zombies. The grandfather seems to be preoccupied and obsessed with zombies himself, and they get fixated on the house across the street. And part 2 goes into this mystery element dealing with the house that does involve the prologue, but the stuff with the neighbors, you never really see any payoff with that, and you only see them at the end, and the ending is kind of just a hunky-dory type of twist, and it's not good. But other than that, this book is solid. I really love this one. And yeah, the Halloween atmosphere, maybe is not the greatest, but really scary one. Really good one. So yeah. Now, now you got my ranking. Now let's get into some thoughts. For the Most Wanted series, so let's start off with some positives, I guess. I liked how Stein kind of brought back Slappy and Miss Marg. And some of these ideas that he did were really good. He had some original ideas here, some fun ones. Basically from, Nightmare on Clown Street all the way up to Zombie Halloween on my ranking, I think were the winners. Which made at least a little over half the series something, to note. The R.L. Stein bits in the beginning of the books were always fun. Getting to see him. I never really mentioned those in the reviews because I just don't feel like doing it. But I usually mention them in the rankings. The R.L. Stein bits, I think, were definitely an improvement from the Crypt Keeper stuff from Hall of Horrors. I think, him introducing the books were fun. He didn't interrupt the books or anything. He just introduced them, showed them the posters to us readers of these most wanted characters, why they are most wanted. He always explain that, even as forced as that is. But yeah, that was pretty fun to see him like kind of narrate and play the Crypt Keeper. I kind of wish he can come back and do that and try that again in a better series, but those were pretty good. Um, and sometimes I appreciated the wildness to him. Sometimes the mad genius came out with the wildness, and sometimes the questionable, baffling stuff came out. But he took some chances here, and I can commend that because in Slappy World he plays it a little more safe. So at least he took chances with this, even though it comes off like kind of formulaic with each book going swinging for the fences in the final inning. But at least there were chances taken, which I can always appreciate. Now we're getting into negatives though, and let's address the elephant in the room. Okay, Most Wanted. Most Wanted is a series that's based around books, right? Let me stack all these real quick. You got books that apparently people want. The Most Wanted Goosebumps characters. And you see all these books, right? You see all these books. Majority of them are new characters. And then you have characters like Dr. Maniac. Why do you need a Dr. Maniac sequel? Planet of the Lawn Gnomes. Why do you need a Lawn Gnome sequel? But then you have the Haunted Mask, which makes sense. You have Slappy, which makes sense. Miss Margaret, which makes sense. It doesn't really feel like a Most Wanted series, you know. Nobody was asking for, you know, Dr. Maniac and the Lawn Gnomes. Maybe some people were asking for Lawn Gnomes, but I highly doubt anybody was asking for Dr. Maniac. Yeah, that whole concept is a lie to the reader. You're not asking for these books. And the other lie to the reader, I guess I'll go ahead and bring this up too, is that the covers lie to you. For example, How I Met My Monster, right? You see this I Love Wolves? There is no wolves in this book. There's none. Covers lie to you sometimes. Look, Trick or Trap, this cover, awesome cover. But this little zombie coming out of the grave doesn't happen in the book. None of that's in the book. Alright? You know, and I can, you know, be more forgiving, but, you know, back to the Son of Slappy. A lot of people were upset. A lot of Slappy fans were upset. Because Slappy fans tend to love the covers. And to be honest, I kind of love Slappy covers too. And if I saw this, and you're thinking you're getting this, like I already said, you're not getting this. You're not getting this little guy here. You're getting something totally different. It definitely, you know, sours expectations, right? And probably the most infamous one, where this is kind of like Son of Slappy level, but Frankenstein's dog. You know, you see this cover of this dog poodle thing, looking like Frankenstein. The book's even called Frankenstein's Dog. Look, there's a dog in the book named Poochie, but that's not what's a Frankenstein monster in it. And there's no dog that dies and comes to life, back to life. I mean, there is, but it's not the way that this cover is describing. So, yeah, this big mislead too. So yeah, the covers lie to you, right? Yeah. Overall, I think the series is just half and half, right? You know, with these blaring negatives, I think they all kind of follow this, you know, most of them follow the retread, kind of suffer from originality, and that kind of tanks them down, you know, inherently. But then they go into, you know, dropping some good concepts that might be there, or they go into the non-plot route where there's no plot, and it's just all random stuff the whole time, or maybe you'll have some semblance of a plot and then it just derails off, you know, in the end of the book. And then a lot of the time you have some really bad endings too, or some really questionable or just whatever endings in this series. You know, nothing that can be, you know, just pinpointing to this series. I mean, a lot of these issues can be happening in other series, which it does. But this season was this series was very frequent with these issues. And it made it harder to like some books, because once you get further into the series, you start to notice its issues, and it slowly became my least favorite series as I went on. And after reading them all, 100% is my least favorite Goosebumps series of all time. I would, like I said, if you go back to my ranking and you see Dr. Maniac Will See You Now all the way up through Trick or Trap, I probably will never read those books again. And I probably wouldn't recommend them to anybody. The others I would probably reread again for specific things in the books, or maybe to reread them because I actually enjoyed them. But, you know, nothing too spectacular, nothing too great, nothing standout, nothing all-time great in here. Maybe minus the prologue to One of the Haunted Mask or the prologue to Zombie Halloween. Other than that, it's a wash. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the Most Wanted series, y'all. Thanks for sticking around. Let me know down in the comments and down in the comment section. What's your favorite Most Wanted book? What's your least favorite Most Wanted book? Do you like the Most Wanted series? Do you hate the Most Wanted series? What's your ranking of the Most Wanted series? I'm dying to know, and I'll see you next time.